in listen-only mode.
Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to the AG5 webinar titled Cybersecurity, Learn How to Detect and Prevent Security Breaches. My name is Anupam Sahai. I am the co-founder and CEO of AG5 Incorporated. In terms of my background, so AG5 is a comprehensive risk security and compliance management platform. More importantly, it provides a complete cybersecurity readiness solution as well. I've been in the industry for about 25 plus years in areas such as healthcare IT, cloud computing, security and compliance, and networking. So this is a complex topic, and what I intend to do today is to at least bring you aware, make you aware, and bring you up to date on the latest thinking in this area. And again, this is a perspective. It's a huge area. There could be multiple angles to it, and we'll proceed with what you see here in the limited time that we have. So I will start out by talking about some of the biggest breaches that have happened in 2014. It's 2015 is flying by, but there are lots of lessons that we can learn from 2014. At least those research is well published and analyzed. And then what are we seeing in 2015 and what's coming? And we'll also dive a little bit deeper into the kind of businesses, what type of businesses are getting impacted, how can we learn from that and take away some of the key nuggets to security harden your organization. And some of the lessons learned, biggest mistakes made, all of that will be covered in a nutshell. And then at the end, we'll probably spend 10 minutes or so at the end talking about AG5, how AG5 can help with cybersecurity readiness. We will have Q&A at the end. So if you have any questions or comments, feel free to type it in the chat section of GoToWebinar. It's one of the windows that you'll see on your GoToWebinar tool. And we will take it up at the end of the session. The webinar is also getting recorded. So if you want to review the recording, we will email it to you, the link to the webinar recording. And if you want a copy of the slides or want to discuss about what we discussed today, feel free to reach out to me and I'll give you my contact information. Again, thank you for your time, and let's get started. So first, let me show you a website that maps out all the latest breaches that are happening in real time. And as you can see here, this was updated about a couple of weeks ago. But this website is very up to date in terms of the latest information that's out there from a breach perspective. And as you can see here, each of these bubbles are breaches that happen, and the timeline is on the left-hand side. So if I scroll down here, there's 2014, 2013, 2012, 11, and it records all the biggest breaches that have happened. And the size of the bubble really is the extent to which the breach happened, or how impactful the breaches are. And that's really measured by the number of records that were lost. So Ashley Madison, which has been in the news, had 37 million records that were breached. That's a big number. Primera, which is a healthcare provider, lost about 11 million records. Anthem Blue Cross, and this is all in 2015, mind you. We are talking about the last few months. Anthem Blue Cross, there was a breach involving 80 million records. So the colors indicate different types of breaches, and you can play around with the tool here to filter based on your areas of interest. So this is a problem that's affecting every business, whether you're a public organization, private organization, governments included, are getting hit pretty badly. And this is a huge problem that businesses are struggling to deal with. And so that's the key message that I would like you to take away. Roughly about 30 to 60 million identities are being stolen every month, with about 15 to 30 incidents happening. So this is a huge problem, and literally it takes research has shown that it takes literally seconds and minutes for attackers to steal the data, whereas it takes weeks and months, if not years, for companies that get breached to detect that there was a problem, and then the dealing with the remediation or curing of the breach is another huge problem today. So there's a huge asymmetry, unfortunately, that favors the cyber attackers, and so we want to understand that a little bit more before we talk about how to deal with it. So if you were to look at what is happening in 2015 and what potentially is coming for the next 4 or 5 months that's left, one thing becomes very clear as we see the trends that healthcare businesses are under attack. And there was a recent KPMG report which essentially said that about 80 to 90% of healthcare businesses have either been breached or there's awareness that something fishy is going on. So 40% of all breaches that happened in 2014 affected healthcare businesses. And this year, if you take into account the Anthem Blue Cross, the Primera, that number could go up further. And the reason is simple, because the value of a healthcare record is very high. Roughly, it's about $200 per record. And unlike credit card information or personal information, which are also valuable, by the way, but the numbers are very different. Typically, cost of a record that is stolen and sold in the underground market for credit cards and personal records can be anywhere between $1 to $50 or $100, whereas the cost of the healthcare record in the underground market can be up to $200. So the sheer volume and the cost and the attractiveness of selling, being able to steal and sell, is really what's driving some of that breaches there. Now, the other thing that you want to be aware of is that the nature and the reason for these breaches are changing as well. So earlier it was financial motive, which continues to be the case, but now a lot of it is espionage, driven by corporates, by nations, and that trend is going to accelerate, we believe, from 2014 to 2015, and I'll show you some charts there. And also the attack vectors are changing a little bit. Now, certainly Windows-based attacks have been pretty common, but now non-window-based platforms, mobile platforms are getting to be the target. And some of the internet software, the open source software, is also getting to be a vehicle for exploiting vulnerabilities to sneak in and to break in and to steal the information. So all of these are huge problems that continue to plague us. And whether we like it or not, cybersecurity will continue to grab headlines and be a problem area. And as you'll see that there are lots of things, very simple things that businesses can do to really take care of most of these problems. There might be some percentage, 1 to 2% of the problems that or breaches that can still happen because they're very, very sophisticated. But 97 to 98% of these breaches can be handled with very simple set of tools. And we'll talk about that and dwell upon them and try to understand what can be done there. So as I was saying, the motivation for the security breaches, as you see here, earlier it used to be really driven by financials, which certainly is an important driver. But espionage, corporate and nation level espionage is trending up, and around, this is data from 2013, and if you extrapolate the lines, they're supposed to meet somewhere in 2015. And the idea here is that a lot of corporate and nation sponsored espionage driven breaches are happening as well, and that trend will accelerate unless there's something done about it. And most of these if you look at the actors in these breaches that are happening, most of these breaches are driven by external attackers rather than internal malicious maybe a disgruntled employee who's trying to steal information before they leave the premises. So the external attackers, the corporate nation-based espionage-driven incentives or the financial-driven incentives are driving these external factors to to break in and steal information. And if you analyze, if you keep deep diving into what kind of breaches are happening, there are a combination of hacking through malware, the physical attacks, there are network exploitations that are happening, and the different categories of breaches that drive these behavior. And a lot of these are essentially uh, as I said, it takes months to discover that a breach happened, and that's the huge asymmetry problem or the advantage that cyber attackers have. And the irony is that 97 of these breaches are avoidable using very simple, low-hanging, intermediate controls-based actions. And this is also borne out by the HP report that came out in February, March this year, where they looked at all previous breaches that happened. And it turns out that, again, 97, 98% of the breaches were due to known vulnerabilities and exploits that were well known. And if businesses had taken very simple steps to deal with them, they would be not breached. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, and they are not very hard to do. So having given the background about what the situation or the scenario from a cybersecurity perspective is, let us dive right into the cybersecurity problem. And I want to first take a few minutes describing what is security, because again, as I said, there are multiple perspectives, multiple angles, and I want to share with you our view of what is security. And then if you know that, and if you're trying to understand that and implement it, these are the key questions that you need to ask. So the three key questions that you need to ask before you talk about securing them. First is, do you know what are your critical assets? And critical assets could be IT assets, it could be key people, it could be key resources like websites or anything that can cause operational problems. It could be processes that you may or may not have. So critical assets, you need to identify them so that you can secure them. The next question is, what are the relevant threats that might affect these critical assets from being operational, being available? And knowing the threats is very important. And once you know the threats, the next question is, are you comfortable that if a breach does happen, that you're able to detect and respond in a timely fashion? So no security mechanism or process is foolproof. There's nothing called 100% security that you can put in place. And I'm saying this with a lot of responsibility. So what you can put up the best defense mechanisms, but it's important to understand that they may get breached. And if those security mechanisms are getting breached by threats that are coming from external or internal attackers, do you have the capabilities in your organization to detect it and respond in a timely fashion? And really the critical asset discussion or enumeration goes hand in hand with this likelihood impact scenario. So you might have a lot of critical assets that might have a very small likelihood of getting affected, but the impact could be huge. If you lose a key employee or if you lose your key website, that becomes non-operational because of an earthquake, because one of your buildings is an earthquake zone. Uh, that quantification of likelihood impact along with the critical assets is very important so that you can identify what are the most risk-prone assets, what are the most risk-prone threats and vulnerabilities that can affect your organization. So from a security perspective, these are the three critical questions that you are looking at. Now, what do you do about it? Again, I want to talk about some conceptual frameworks, and then we can talk about what we can do. So, if you look at, let's say, a home environment, let's take a simple example of a physical home, and there you have a combination of mechanisms to protect yourself. So you might put together locks and windows that are really physical safeguards that you're uh, putting in place so that you can prevent any robbers or strangers from coming in. Now, they might still be able to break in, and then you need to put together some kind of a monitoring or detecting surveillance system to ensure that if they do break in, then either through heat maps or through the motion detectors, you're able to detect the breach of the locks and windows. And if a breach does happen as detected by the surveillance system, the next thing is to do a timely response so that you're able to either scare away the attacker or repel the attack. And this could be by having maybe a dog in your house, or there might be an alarm that calls the police, etc., etc., or alarm goes off. So in a home environment, what you're talking about is that there is a combination of mechanisms that fall in the category of protection, detection, and responsiveness that provides a comprehensive, almost a foolproof mechanism to protect your house. And as I said earlier, no single security mechanism is foolproof. We have to make that assumption. And so the best we can do is to provide a combination of mechanisms so that if one falls flat, the other kicks in and is able to detect breaches and respond to it. Now, if you take the home environment and extend it to the internet world, where every business can not only physically affect you by breaking the physical door, but they can also come through the internet. So there is a need to have a similar set of protect, detect, and respond mechanisms that deal with IT assets and non-IT assets, which is really the technical and administrative safeguard categories. So what you're doing here is you are putting together a combination of physical and non-physical safeguards. Safeguards could be controls, it could be physical controls, security systems, physical security systems, or it could be uh, internet-based mechanisms from a technology perspective, from a policy perspective that allows you to implement a comprehensive, robust cybersecurity program. And if you look at the NIST cybersecurity framework, they have a similar concept that they are trying to evangelize in terms of making sure that everybody understands the needs for different mechanisms. So let's dive into a bit of a risk management, because really what we are saying is that from an organizational point of view, you are trying to evaluate the risk exposure that you have as an organization, and the risk exposure encompasses your cybersecurity risk, your organizational risk, and really what risk is measuring is what are the chances that any adversarial event or action can affect you as an organization. And affecting basically means that it impacts your critical resources in a manner that's undesirable. And so the critical assets and risk assessment go hand in hand. And really what risk assessment is trying to do is to estimate and quantify, or qualitatively quantify if necessary, what the risk exposure is. So the reason why this is so important is because it gives you a handle, exhaustive way of looking at the organizational risk by evaluating all these different possibilities for all of your critical assets. What kind of threats can affect it? What are the weaknesses in the system and in the organization, and the likelihood impact of that critical asset being compromised? And the reason this is important is because you have to do a risk analysis to really understand where you stand as an organization today to deal with any cybersecurity threats. And the cost of not doing so is very high. There's some data out there, as I said, the cost per cost per record for getting breached can be anywhere between $1 to $200 per record. And if somebody comes in and steals your data, running into hundreds of thousands, that can be a huge number. So the average cost per breach, this is data coming from Ponemon Institute, is about 5.5 million based on all the breaches that have happened. And risk analysis is required by any robust security program or compliance program. So it's not something that is uncommon, but not many people do it for lack of awareness or lack of guidance on how to automate and get it done. So this is really summarizing the risk management framework that is needed. And I'll spend maybe a few minutes on this. What this is showing is that you're looking at all your critical assets and all the threats that can impact those critical assets. And these threats can be because of an adversarial attacker, inside or outside, doesn't matter. These attackers are using a sequence of actions called threat events to exploit weaknesses in your organization. And these weaknesses, vulnerabilities could be IT asset related, it could be people process related, or physical security related. So they're exploiting weaknesses in the system and thereby causing adverse impact, which can cause problems for the organization. It can potentially cause information loss. It can cause operational continuity impact. All of those are impactful. And what you're trying to do is to evaluate these combinations for all your critical assets to come up with a risk score. Now, the risk mitigating factor are these controls that are put in place. This could be physical controls or technical or administrative controls that are preventing or repelling the attacker from compromising these critical assets. So when you're doing a risk assessment for the organization, you're looking at all of these variables to come up with a qualitative or a quantitative score. So having talked about risk management, having talked about what it involves doing a cybersecurity or a security assessment, the question is, why are the current programs falling through? And there are really multiple reasons for it. One is that there's a lot of confusion around which security control frameworks to choose. We get asked questions like, do we use ISO? Do we use SANS 20? Do we use Octave, NIST? And how do we go about doing and protecting our cybersecurity related threats? And the other compounding problem is that there are a number of siloed solutions that are fragmented, that deal with bits and pieces of the security problem that needs to be addressed. And so there's a lot of confusion. And a lot of the organization problems that we see are really driven from the top. Either it's lack of awareness or lack of direction. And so governance is an important issue that we find that if there's no will at the executive suite level, at the CEO level, that they need to be looking into cybersecurity, then nothing works. You might put together some tweaking mechanisms, but they might not be long lasting or may not be effective. So it's important that that there is visibility and mandate at the top that drives this behavior. And as I said, 97% of these attacks can be prevented by simple security controls. That's really the irony of all of this. Now, while there are multiple security control frameworks that might be applicable, ISO, NIST, SANS 20, I'm going to talk about SANS 20 today a little bit more, because this is really a very comprehensive multinational initiative that has really been firming up over the years. And it's called SANS 20 because there are really 20 critical security controls that are recommended by this organization, by this. And as I said, this is developed by security experts. It's continuously being evaluated, and it shifts the focus from compliance to a security focus, which is really the thrust of cybersecurity. And best of all, it's evolving continuously as new threats and new vulnerabilities are happening. the community is able to move fast and be able to address most of the issues that are happening. So it's actually very, very compelling. And as you'll see, some of the statistics and analysis that I'll do, that this is a very robust framework to adopt if you haven't adopted any of the other frameworks. And if you look at the 20 controls, by the way, CSC1 means critical security control 1, security control 2. So there are 20 controls that you see here, and they fall in three different categories. There is the resource hardening and access control, which is really the protect aspect of the framework. There is a detection aspect of the controls, and then there is a recovery, which is the response part of the framework. So the protect, detect, and respond uh, process for creating a comprehensive and robust cyber defense lifecycle is also implemented by the SANS 20 framework. And I won't go into the detail, but I would urge you to look into this. And the 20 controls really, this is an example of the 20 controls. They deal with everything in the organization that could be a critical asset. It deals with devices, software, hardware, malware, wireless access points, training, configuration issues, networking, access controls, all of the issues that you as an organization who's trying to become mature as a cybersecurity uh, defense program, that you're trying to implement a cybersecurity defense program, you should look into the SANS 20 critical controls. And if we analyze the different threat vectors that over the years have affected businesses, you'll find that there are about 9 such threat vectors that deal with point of sale, web application, insider misuse, physical theft, crimeware, card skimmer. So these are different threat vectors, and there are 9 of these threat vectors that typically affect the businesses. And so what you're trying to do is these 9 critical threat vectors, and here is a listing of the 20 security controls, SANS 20 controls, and how they contribute towards detecting and protecting and responding to any of these critical threat vectors. So you can see here that all these attack patterns are taken into account by these 20 controls in different varying degrees of control. And if you look at these critical security controls, you can see that uh, the percentage of attacks that can be easily addressed by following these critical controls, it adds up to about 97% of the attacks. So going back to what I was saying, by implementing a SANS 20 control like framework, and there are other control frameworks that have the same protect, detect, and respond category of capabilities. But by implementing a SANS 20 framework, you're able to take care of 97% of the attacks that would happen and would exploit these different weaknesses in your system that relate to IT or non-IT related stuff. So this is very encouraging, and some of this are very quick when easy to do. Some of them might be advanced that might need a more sophisticated program, but most of these are very simple, easy to do, that can be done with very little effort. So we talked about the problems and the potential solution. One of the challenges that I mentioned earlier is that there are a number of siloed solutions that only look at um, uh, controls. They only look at vulnerabilities. They only look at threat detection, but they're not looking, some of them are only looking at risk management. And that's one of the reasons we developed Agify, which is to provide a single stop solution that gives you continued readiness for cybersecurity defense. So Agify is a single solution that has built-in capabilities to do assessments, scanning, remediation, training, and then continuously monitoring to make sure if there are changes happening in the environment that you're staying on top of it. So it's got built-in control framework, SANS 20 control framework. It's got a built-in security scanning tool that can discover assets, do vulnerability scans, and then it will tell you the risk score that your organization has through automation. And all of this information is combined in a single dashboard so that you don't have to look at multiple tools. The data is analyzed by an expert system at the back end that allows you to visualize them and understand the correlation between these different contributing factors. And the solution has won multiple awards from the industry. Um, we were given the highest 5-star rating from SC Magazine, putting us in the leader category, market leader category from a solution perspective. I won't spend too much time on this, but suffice it to say that the tool has an automated workflow that allows you to do a baseline assessment, then fix the problems that are found, and then continuously monitor to ensure that all of your cybersecurity related issues are detected ahead of time, they're fixed, and then they're monitored continuously to ensure that all of the issues are up to date. So the protect, detect, and response cycle is automated by the tool, and that's really the key thing that I would like you to take away is that, as I said earlier, any robust cybersecurity defense program needs a combination of protect, detect, and respond mechanisms and different controls that fall in these different categories. And AG5 provides a comprehensive framework that allows you to implement these mechanisms. And by the way, you can pick and choose third-party tools. If you already have a scanning tool, you don't want to use the AG5 scanning tool, that's fine. We can import data from third-party scanning tools or compliance frameworks. But the idea here is that you will be able to build a comprehensive and robust cybersecurity program using AG5. AG5 also has complete support for SANS 20. It's integrated into the scanning and the assessment process so that the expert system will analyze your infrastructure and tell you what the holes are, what the gaps are, and then you can look at the risk exposure to focus on the most important issues that are critical for your organization. It comes pre-packaged with policy templates, procedures that you can adopt as well in case you don't have it, or if you have it, then you can upload your current policies and procedures to manage it using the portal. So think of AG5 as a unified and integrated platform that's immediately deployable, that allows you to do assessments and continuously monitor it to make sure that you're staying on top of any changes that happen. And this has been built by a security team that has a huge amount of industry experience. We've listened to the customers and partners to help us design and provide feedback to improve it. And the ROI that you can envisage from the solution is really in months. We have a complete automated risk management solution that's built in. I won't go into the details as well, but because it may not be required, but we can certainly talk about this if it's interest. Suffice it to say that risk management today is a very cumbersome process, and it's a very manually intensive process that needs a lot of resources. What we've done at AG5 is to automate the whole process by minimizing the heavy lifting required. So earlier you might be bringing in an consultant, assessment consultant to help you with this process, and that becomes a one-time effort. What we have done at AG5 is to automate the whole process so that you can have all the information available in real time in the tool, and then you can use the tool to continuously monitor to make sure that it stays current. So it has a built-in knowledge base, it has a built-in sort of risk scenarios that you can leverage so that your time to assess and manage your risk is minimal. I want to show you a few slides on how the solution looks like so that you get a sense of what AG5 does. It will assess your overall security and compliance risk, give you very simply where you stand, which assets are impacted, which vulnerabilities are there. If you deal with any compliance controls, in this case HIPAA, it says it's very high. And by the way, there's a free community edition that's available. If you go to ag5.com, you'll see a button to download a free trial. So you can play around with this. You'll see a risk dashboard that's similar to this. So the risk dashboard will give you information to assess your organizational risk based on assets, based on controls that are in place or missing, and you can do a what if analysis to ensure that you're focused on most important priorities that are important to you. The assessment framework is very simple. It's a simple yes or no questions. We provide a complete knowledge base that has citation guidance, best practices, implementation briefs, so that you're able to understand the question and learn from the best practices in the industry to go about answering them. There's also a built-in problem resolution so that you know whether you're doing the best that you expected to do. So that if an auditor walks in, you're able to provide the evidence and give them all that you've done. As I said, you can do what if analysis. You can figure out what assets and which controls are impactful. You can see if you implement these two controls, how does my risk get affected? You can draw heat maps. So it's again a complete risk management framework which integrates with security and compliance assessment so that you get a single dashboard view for the entire organization. And there's an executive dashboard that can be viewed by the senior management. And then there is an operational dashboard that the chief risk officer or the chief compliance officer or the security officer can view. So there is different levels of detail depending on your interest, and you can pick and choose that based on the roles that are pre-configured in the system. So I know I covered a lot of information today, and I'm sure that you'll have some additional questions. Please type them in the Q&A section of GoToWebinar. We'll pick it up today at the end of the session, or we can connect via email and answer any questions. So in summary, what I would say, as I said, hopefully you're convinced that cyber attacks is rising, but it's getting more complicated, it's getting more organized, and more sophisticated hackers are coming into play. So it's important that that organizations like yourself implement a comprehensive and a robust security program with continuous monitoring. And I want to emphasize the word robust, because no single security mechanism is foolproof. So assume that whatever mechanisms that you have in place will get breached. So a combination of protect, detect, and respond mechanisms is key to a robust security program. You need to also do a risk analysis to make sure that you are staying on top of the known exposures in the organization, instead of digging yourself in a hole without knowing where the weaknesses lie. It's important to do a risk analysis so that you're aware of what the problem areas are. And then cybersecurity hardening your organization using a framework like SANS 20. As I said, any other framework like Octave, NIST, FISMA, ISO, they also have a pretty sophisticated security mechanisms, but we certainly recommend SANS 20 as being one of the frameworks that you should consider. And you can leverage AG5 for your cybersecurity needs to implement a comprehensive, robust security program. So with that, let me pause here. And as I said, you can go to ag5.com, click and download a free trial. You can reach out to us at 68892586. And here are my contact information. Would welcome any comments or thoughts or questions that you might have. So let me pause here and see whether you have any questions. I'll give you a few minutes to type in your questions in the questions area, and we will pick it up as we go along. So please type in any questions that you have in the questions area for us to be able to answer it. Okay, so there's a question about how do you know that the cybersecurity program is robust? So that's a very key question. As I said, no security mechanism or program can be foolproof. No single security mechanism can be foolproof unless you create a robust security program which spans a combination of protect, detect, and respond mechanisms. And unless you have that combination capability, without assuming that a single security uh, application or device that you put in place is sufficient, that's the first starting point. And then it's important to have a control framework like SANS 20 to ensure that you're looking into all aspects of the organization, IT related, physical safety related, um, uh, process related, and people related. So having a combination of these mechanisms makes it robust and secure. What does the product cost assuming 1,000 nodes? Now that's a difficult question to answer right away, because the pricing is a function of number of nodes. It's also a function of number of users that are going to be using the tool. So if you're interested in pricing, please, we would have to ask you a few more questions. So we will reach out to you separately and inquire about some other variables before giving you a pricing number. Any other questions? Please type them into the Q&A section. Okay, so the question is, how does Agify compare with the other cybersecurity tools that are out there? So Agify, as I said earlier, the current tools that are out there are fragmented. And what I mean by that is that there are tools that just do GRC, that look at compliance frameworks, they do assessments, and give you a assessment score. Then there are other category of tools that do vulnerability analysis and penetration testing, and they tell you the weaknesses that exist in the company. And then there is another set of tools that do just risk management. And these different siloed applications are unable to interact and integrate with each other. And the burden of assimilating and interpreting the results of these different applications is left to the chief security officer or the IT manager. And that's error prone, that's ineffective and very expensive and hard to maintain. What we have done using Agify is to we have unified all these different siloed applications into a single application. And by the way, you can bring in third-party applications into the framework, but what you get is a comprehensive framework, a robust security framework that allows you to assess your entire organization and then continuously monitor to make sure that you're robust and compliant all the time. Okay, this is a long question, so let me read this. So there's a comment that the cybersecurity webinar required a download of executable from GoToWebinar. Yeah, you have the option of doing that or attending on the web as well. So you have either option. If you're not comfortable downloading an executable, then you can view it on the web. Okay, so what I will do is feel free to reach out to us if you have any further questions. We'll be able to answer them for you. And we appreciate your time and attention today. Um, hope we would love to hear your feedback. If you want a copy of the slides, please drop me a note and we will be happy to provide it for you. Otherwise, if you have any questions about the webinar or any of the products, please let us know and we'll be able to answer it for you. Again, thank you very much for your time. Have a great day. Take care.